You can just go to the next slide. So here are my disclosures. Yeah. No, yeah, go ahead. Next slide, please. Yeah. So, I think that although this is not the results everyone want to see, and everyone who are dealing with metastatic colorectal cancer, I wanted to start by my presentation by saying that over time we are making progress. So this is the most recently published data looking at FOLFOXIRI plus panitumumab in RAS/RAF wild-type advanced colorectal cancer. As you can see, that the median overall survival now is 41 months. This is really the first time we are seeing results from a clinical trial, phase 3 clinical trial, with a reported median overall survival over 40 months. Next slide. So this is just to contrast with another classical paper that published just over 20 years ago, looking at two strategies, FOLFIRI followed by FOLFOX, or FOLFOX followed by FOLFIRI. As you can see, that in this study, the median overall survival is only about 20 months. So over the last 20 years, we are making progress, but the progress small, and we would obviously want to make greater progress, and the way we do that is through clinical trials. Next slide, please. So as we already mentioned, that we now know that colorectal cancer is a heterogeneous disease, that in terms of molecular alterations, so that in 40% of patients with colorectal cancer, they have RAS mutation. Right? Up to about 5 years ago, RAS mutation are considered to be undruggable, but we are again making great progress in this field. So what we have right now is a G12C is the first RAS mutations that have drugs targeting it. And G12C is relatively rare, less than 5%. So now we have a trial looking at divarasib, which is oral G12C inhibitor plus bevacizumab plus FOLFOX in newly diagnosed G12C mutated colorectal cancer. And also we have another phase 3 study looking at a different compound, but compared with placebo, current standard of care. Now, another more common mutation is G12D, which happens in about 15% of patients. Right now, that there's various G12D targeting agents in development. Our phase 1 program is having several compounds targeting G12D, and I'm hoping that in the next 6 months or so, that those at least one of those compounds will enter into a phase 3 trial in the advanced colorectal cancer setting. Next slide. Moving on to the BRAF mutation, and so about 10% of patients have BRAF mutation, and the most common mutation is the V600E mutation. And we all know that BRAF mutation is associated with a more aggressive disease. Next slide. So 5 years ago, that the Beacon study results were published, as you can see here, and so inclufenib and the cetuximab produced a progression-free survival about 4.3 months. This is an improvement compared to the control, but 4.3 months really is nothing to write home about, right? Although inclufenib and the cetuximab has been approved for patients who has progressed on chemotherapy, but we need to look for newer agents and more effective agents. Next slide. In that trial, so sorry, go back. So there's two cohorts of that study. One is looking at patients who have already received chemotherapy, and the second cohort is looking at this new BRAF inhibitor plus cetuximab plus FOLFOX in patients who have not received any chemotherapy. So, hopefully that we'll see results even better than what the breakwater results will show. Next slide. Now, for those 50% patients who have no RAS or RAF mutation or RAS-RAF wild type, there are also drugs in clinical development right now. And one of the agents is amivantamab, and we are participating in a trial looking at the chemo, either FOLFOX or FOLFIRI plus amivantamab, but in right-sided colorectal cancer right now. Next slide. Another newer drug we're working with is this pembrolizumab, which is a bispecific antibody against EGFR and LGR5. So we are working to activate both a first-line and a second-line study, compare pembrolizumab plus chemotherapy versus cetuximab plus chemotherapy, and hopefully that this will be active in the next 2-3 months. Next slide. Now, but more importantly, that the biggest progress in oncology has been immunotherapy. In colorectal cancer, we know that only 5% patients with dMMR or MSI high colorectal cancer will benefit from immunotherapy. For most patients who are MSI stable, immunotherapy have not shown to be beneficial. So this is a study we participated, CheckMate 9x8, basically looking at the FOLFOX plus bevacizumab plus minus nivolumab. As you can see that although the median progression-free survival is the same in both arms, with or without nivolumab, but there is that tail we see in other cancers as well. For example, at 16 months, right, patients get treated with nivolumab has a progression-free survival of 28%, while only 9% with standard care treatment remained progression-free survival. So the question for us is that how do we identify patients who potentially could benefit from immunotherapy, or is there any way we could overcome that resistance we see in most colorectal cancer patients? Next slide. This is our data from the CO26 study. So this is looking at patients with or without liver mets. We know that 80% of patients with metastatic colon cancer have liver involvement. So if you just look at the orange line, so the dash lines are patients with liver mets and treated with immunotherapy, and the solid orange line are patients without liver mets. As you can see that there is that clear separation. Okay, so there are trials now that are exploring this difference in terms of resistance. Next slide. So AstraZeneca is working on a study looking at the 20% patients without liver mets, but MSI stable, that the patients are randomized 2-to-1 to their PD-1 CTLA-4 antibody plus chemotherapy versus chemotherapy alone. And this study is active, and we have several patients on the study. Next slide. That's awesome. Now, But for that 80% patient with liver involvement, what do we do, right? So there's different approaches, as I mentioned before. So Uno is a Japanese pharmaceutical company who actually developed nivolumab initially and licensed it to BMS. So they are working on a new compound, 4578, which is an EP4 inhibitor. So EP4 is involved in generating myeloid-derived stem cells and M2 macrophages, so that those MDSC and M2 macrophage subsequently confer resistance to immunotherapy in the tumor microenvironment. So this study is looking at patients who are PD-L1 positive. So we screen patients with their covered tumors, and if they are positive, they get randomized to standard chemotherapy with FOLFOX/bev plus or FOLFOX/bev plus nivolumab and plus 2 doses of this Uno 4578. And this study is ongoing. And again, we have several patients on the study right now. Next slide. Another way to tackle the immunoresistance by looking at this bispecific antibodies against PD-1 and the VEGF. And you probably heard that there are several of those antibodies out there, and some of them have already shown good efficacy in non-small cell lung cancer. So this is a study run by Pfizer looking at their bispecific antibody plus FOLFOX versus FOLFOX plus bevacizumab. And again, this study is open right now. Next slide. And there's other bispecific antibodies out there. Insight is looking at anti-PD-1 and the TGF-beta bispecific antibody, and their study is randomized patients to FOLFOX plus Bev versus antibody plus Bev plus FOLFOX, and we are hoping to activate this study in the next month or two. Next slide. And so those are all first-line studies I talked about, and I can't forget to mention that CO33, which is direct follow-up to CO26. So this is a so-called Batman study. So this is for patients who have already had various treatment and there's no further options, and the patients are randomized to PD-1 and CTLA-4 antibody against best supportive care. So this is a Canadian, Australian, New Zealand, and French joint effort, and it is open in many centers across the country right now. Next slide. So for patients who are MSI high, and they are usually treated with immunotherapy first, but when they progress, currently there's no other targeted therapy. So we are working with a class of drugs called Werner helicase inhibitors, so that those Werner helicase helps the DNA to unwind during the replication. So if you block this unwinding of DNA, the cells cannot replicate, and so as a result of that, they will die. And so this is a single arm study, and we are looking at the patients who are MSI high, who have progressed on standard immunotherapy right now. Next. Now, I can't talk about clinical trials without mentioning another class of drugs called ADCs, or antibody drug conjugates. So those are basically smart chemotherapy drugs, and one of the ADCs in development in colorectal cancer is this compound from GSK targeting B7H3, and it is active, and we have several patients on the trial on this study right now. Next. So, but I think that I don't think that clinical trials is for everyone, right? So that, especially given the geographic condition of Ontario, that there's things we have to consider. But I think that we are making progress by doing those clinical trials. Next slide. Before I close, I just want to thank each one of you for your courage, for your resilience, and for your grace. And I always say that you guys are my heroes, and I think that only by working together we can make a progress, and we could have better results, and hopefully that makes this dreadful disease into a long-term illness. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you.